Well, hello everybody. Welcome to Worldviews. Today we have on my dear buddy Cooper Harrison, and Cooper is actually a cancer survivor diagnosed in 2004 and had been in remission for almost 20 years. Cooper, thanks for coming on, buddy.
Yeah. Yeah, no, thanks. Thanks for having me. It's a pleasure to be here, and it's a pleasure to be your friend. I'm honored.
Oh, stop! You make me blush here. Live on the pod. Anyway, Coop, just describe. I guess walk the audience through the first moments you found out.
Oh, first moments I found out about leukemia. Yeah, I would say. Well, so I was young, so thinking about it now, you come in with a sense of like you're a child and you don't know anything about medical conditions really because you're 7. So I really just was confused at first, but then they explained what leukemia was on a cellular level using a poster board with jelly beans glued onto it, and then the different colored jelly beans represented the different cells. So basically, excuse me, the white blood cells were white jelly beans, red blood cells were red jelly beans. The leukemia cells were like these big purple jelly beans. Platelets were like green, and I think I think that was it. I think that those were the only cells that they really showed to me just to make it simplified. But yeah, so they used that as a diagram of what was going on in my body, and they're showing like these purple jelly beans attacking, all of my cells, and then the white blood cells were trying to attack the purple cells in this instance. And once I kind of understood that, I understood the severity of the condition and the situation, and it definitely scared me a little bit. I didn't know the likelihood of whether I would make it or not. I think back I think statistically back when I was going through it, I think it was like around 30-70 you would make it. But now with today's research and, studies, we're at 70-30 now where you're gonna make it. So it's like a very, high probability. My probability was definitely significantly lower. So it was like, 30-70. And I didn't really fathom that. I didn't really think about that though. So, you know, I just was in that mode of I gotta do what I gotta do to survive. So I'm just gonna listen to my parents. I'm gonna listen to my doctor. I'm just gonna go through this, painful process. And then I'm gonna get to, the end, the light at the end of the tunnel. I'm gonna get to the end point. Everything's gonna be fine. So yeah, that's kind of what went through my head at first.
Yeah, and so it's interesting that you mentioned the flop here. In 2004, it was 30%. Now 20 years later, it's up to 70. That's like such a remarkable feat in, like, the medical field, I feel like.
No, yeah, it's honestly incredible. And, I think that, research and studies and technology too, I think has really advanced our generational progression and innovation in genomics and in therapies, any therapies, like any medical therapies, we've been able to fast track because of technology. Because we can now simulate situations, we can simulate scenarios with technology in terms of a progression of, I would say, immunotherapies, because that's what they're called. They're called immunotherapies. So it's really simulating a certain disease that can attack cancer that won't hurt you or harm you. And that is the crazy part of these studies. So like for example, with brain tumors, what they were doing is they were finding different diseases to inject into the tumor, because the thing about tumors is tumors go undetected by your cells. I don't know why, but they like in the brain tumor, the reason why it can progressively, kill you is because it goes undetected. But now what they're doing is they're injecting like polio, like certain diseases into the tumor, and then the white blood cells find it and then they attack the tumor because they think the tumor is like polio. So it's attacking that. And so they're able to find these diseases that your immune system can fight and inject those into certain cancers. Now, with leukemia, because it's a blood disease, it's a blood cancer, they're using immunotherapies, which I don't have the best knowledge on. I'm not gonna, talk crazy and act like I know what I'm talking about with immunotherapies. But from what I've seen, from a surface level, it's a very powerful tool, and that's why they've had so much success with it and allowing your body to heal, on its own in a way. So, not using as much radiation and as much chemotherapy, because the problem with those is it's so toxic to your body that it hurts your immune system in the long term, where immunotherapies can still help your body heal in a natural way that doesn't decompose you.
Mm. And the whole jelly bean example that they showed you,
Mhm.
obviously, they showed you that because you were just 8 years old.
Yeah.
Do you know? Because now I'm curious of when they stopped showing people that example to when they're, like, adults. Like, I'm sure they don't show 20-year-olds the jelly bean example. I'm sure at some point the age cuts off to where that
Yeah.
is. But so at that time, though, you felt that you didn't have that much of an understanding of what was going on until maybe days or weeks after the fact?
Mhm. Yeah, I would say are you asking in terms of, like, the severity of the
Yes,
situation as a
yeah.
kid? Yeah, because it's so hard to explain to a child, like an adolescent child. I think because I was at St. Louis Children's, so it's obviously a children's hospital, so they probably had the same protocol most of the time, but obviously with an 18-year-old kid, you probably if I was an 18-year-old kid at Children's Hospital, it's probably going to be different in terms of I'm probably going to look at, this knowledge tool differently. And honestly, with technology progression nowadays, I'm sure they have kind of informational videos that they show new patients, especially kids. I mean, because obviously, screens are big in a child's life. I'm sure they have very creative ways to show informational, educational content to kids that are going through this experience. Now, the real question is, how do you message it in a way that doesn't freak the kid out? Because the thing
Mhm.
is, like, you have to be gentle in this situation, right? Because as much as you want to be realistic with a child, it's almost like, well, you can't freak the child out. It's not going to be like, oh, you have a real possibility of dying. That wasn't, the thing that was said because I'm 7 years old and that would freak me out. I really just kind of came to realize it when I, was progressing through life and learning the severity of the situation. And then also my parents are freaked out, my siblings are freaked out, friends are freaked out. Like they're crying or they're having emotional reactions to this. So obviously their reactions are me visualizing or realizing, oh, this is very serious. And it's almost it's profound as a kid to process all that because like you're not told exactly how severe it is. But you can't blame those people because I don't think it's fair to put, you know, a doctor or nurse or, a medical professional in the situation of trying to tell a 7-year-old like, oh, like you could die. Like, yeah, that's pretty intense. So I think the process for what it was pretty good. But I mean, we learn about cancer when we're in, middle school. At least I did. Like I learned about like biology and those sorts of things. So I don't know about you.
Yeah, we spent a lot of time in PE class, and that's about it. So, but because now I'm thinking the second you found out, talked about everyone's emotions coming out. Did you feel like people treat you very differently? It was like a night and day difference from before you found out to after the fact?
uh, you know, I'd say a lot of people did treat me differently. I know a lot of friends and family visited me. I know a lot of friends and family were definitely worried about me. And I think playing sports was definitely the differentiator of how I was treated. because I sat out a lot. I took a lot of breaks, and I didn't like that as a kid. I wanted to go. I mean, I was a competitor. I still am a competitor to this day, but I was a competitor and I wanted to get out there and I wanted to play sports. And, unfortunately my coaches and, my dad was a coach too. And, they wanted me to sit out, at times, or they wanted me to take breaks at times. And, it I was like kind of upset at first, but then like I realized, hey, you gotta, you gotta treat your body well because, there's, playing sports as a kid, obviously you would play multiple games in a day, right? Like in basketball or baseball or whatever. Like you'd play multiple games in a day if you had like tournaments and stuff. So I couldn't physically do that because of this condition or like because of this disease. So I learned patience through this and I learned how to rest my body better and recover better as I progressively have gotten older through this experience. But yeah, people did treat me differently. I felt like I got a lot of grace. I didn't want a lot of grace, but I did get a lot of grace. When I took, they put me on a steroid when I was recovering from chemotherapy at times. And I remember taking the steroid, like it would give me mood swings. So this steroid gave you everything but muscular, definition. So I would get mood swings, get hungry. And, I was definitely like an angry person, like not intentionally angry. It was just, this was the steroid. I got agitated very quickly. And, a lot of people gave me grace, especially at my grade school. And I appreciated those people, especially the principal of my grade school. Like she let me nap in her office basically. And yeah. Yeah, I'm just really grateful for those people because they gave me opportunities to just cut myself some slack, because I was a highly empathetic kid still. So, like, when I would get upset, I would feel bad, but people wouldn't make me feel as bad, if that makes sense, because they're like, "It's okay. You're on this steroid, going through a rough time." My grandmother died of lung cancer when I was going through treatment as well. So, you know, it. I appreciated those people that gave me grace and cut me a lot of slack.
Yeah, and leading up to the moment you found out, what actually led to the hospital visit?
Yeah. What led to the hospital visit was it was pretty quick. It felt like a pulled hamstring in a way, which like, as a kid, like pulling your hamstring is it's kind of crazy. Like, cause we're supposed to be pretty,
Yeah.
nimble in a sense, like pretty flexible. But then like I had night sweats and fever every night for about a week straight. And we were climbing up there to like it was like 99, 100, 101. We're climbing up there, not to urgent care level, but it was always lingering around this fever. Um, so we found that strange, especially after this whole hamstring, incident. So basically, we took me to urgent care, and then the emergency room and got blood work done and they found St. Luke's found some high white blood cells, low red blood cell, low platelet count. Like it was high white blood cells, so you're fighting an infection, medically speaking. And then low, everything else was pretty low. So it's like, okay, it's fighting something and it's depleting you. So go to ER at Children's because they have the, advanced testing. So then that's when they did blood work, and then they did the bone marrow biopsy, and that's when they found out. So this was like over the course of the testing and everything was over the course of like probably 72 hours, I would say.
Mm. And I wanna walk through to the treatment process. How did that look?
Yeah. 2.5 years
Yeah.
of chemo, bone marrow biopsy, I think 3 or 4 times total, just to obviously check up on me to see if everything's working. And chemo was every for 2.5 years, it was, like, every month and then every few months, I wanna say, and then checkups after that were every month, and then after a year, it's every I think it was, like, every 3 months, and then it was, like, every 4 months, and then 6 months, and then just, like, once every year, and then I stopped going when I was 18, to children's. Oh, no, wait. Yeah, I was 18. So that was, like, I'm trying to think. So that was, like, 10 years basically, and then, I just went to, obviously your primary care, physician, told them the situation, so they get, the CBC, blood work done for me now. Um, so yeah, that's pretty much how that process goes.
So at its peak, how many days a week or days a month were you at the hospital?
Oh, I mean, I was in the hospital for, like, when I got diagnosed, I was in there for about a month, I wanna say, and then when I got, chemo, they wouldn't really keep me. They didn't really need to keep me, so I was only there for, like, a whole day. That was about it.
So what does going through chemo look like?
Going through chemo, see, so I woke up, uh, I'm missing school for, like, 2 days. So I'm missing school, like, the Thursday I would get treatment, and then the Friday usually. And basically what would happen is I'd go in early in the morning, they would do blood work, and then they'd take me back to then I'd, be in the waiting room, and then they'd take me back to, you know, this private room where, you have your bed. Then you get IV stuck in you. And I had a portacath too, which for those that don't know these medical terms, a portacath is basically just like a chest. I would say like it's equipment you have to put under the skin in your chest that connects to one of your main, I want to say arteries. That's like near your neck, basically. So just, it's easier to get blood from, so you don't have to keep sticking your arm. So they would stick the portacath, and then they would basically set me up to an IV, and then once they were ready to proceed, they would inject. I forgot what it's called, but it's a chemical that dries up your spit, so you're not like drooling, and there's not like saliva during the operation. And then there was ketamine, injected into they used ketamine, a very small dosage of ketamine, but they would use ketamine on me, to help relax, myself better and put myself to sleep better. And then there was another drug they injected that would fully put me out, basically, because I was only out for like 15 minutes. It's not a long procedure. It's a very short
Mhm.
procedure, actually. That's the thing people don't actually realize about some of these things. Like the procedures are like very quick. And it was like 15 minutes. So yeah, I remember they injected me with those three things. They'd lie me on my, I think they would lie me on my side, and then they'd lie me on one side. So I'd lay on like my left side. Then they took a long needle syringe, dug that into the base of my spinal cord where the spinal fluid is, your kind of lumbar area near your, I'd say like your coccyx. So like above basically your glutes in a sense, but it's like the base of your spine and the base of your spinal fluid. Inject syringe, inject needle into the fluid, inject the chemo, take needle out, cover it up, and then they would make me lie on my back, so then the chemo could then distribute itself all along my spinal fluid.
Mm.
And I would lay there for about an hour, I want to say, and then I'd fully wake up, come out of this induced, sleep in a way. And then I would be able to pretty much get up and leave, like, a couple hours later, and then I'd get home around probably 4 o'clock. Eating was tough because your mouth is super dry for, like, a whole day. So it's like it was really funny. My parents, back when Panera was actually good food, I make that joke always, but, my mom would get me a cinnamon roll, and she would heat it up in the microwave, and me smelling that cinnamon roll would, like, salivate me. So we were actually finding ways to hack this drug by basically doing, like, a placebo effect through, like, a satiating food that just excites you. So that was actually, like, kind of a funny, like, silver lining in this whole situation, was being able just to, like, use the whole, like, placebo effect, just to hack your senses. So that's kinda cool to ponder on every now and then, but yeah, and yeah, I'd basically get home 3 or 4 o'clock, and then I just, go to bed, pretty early just because, I'm very drained, obviously from this chemo, and I'd be throwing up sometimes. I'd be pretty sick. And then, usually the next day, I'd probably either skip school or I'd probably go in late morning or early afternoon. So, like, either after lunchtime or just before lunchtime, just to I don't know, I felt like I wanted to go to school because I just wanted to feel normal.
Quick question. So if I microwaved a Panera Bread cinnamon roll in front of you right now, would you salivate?
Probably, I mean, Pavlov's dog, right? Like, it's just this repetitive rhythmic thing, right? So it probably would work. I don't know about their cinnamon rolls now, but the ones they had, back when it was St. Louis Bread Co., like, just St. Louis Bread Co., those were the best, man. Like, those were the absolute best. They had the perfect ratio of, icing versus, like, the bread. Like, it was so much it was huge too.
It
Remember,
was huge, I remember that.
massive. They're like the size of your head, and now they're kinda, like, tiny and way too they put too much icing on that thing now.
Yeah, different era for cinnamon rolls back then, man.
Such a different era, yeah. I mean, for the viewers, this is a mocktail, I promise you. I just like to make it look fancy in a wine glass, just for the viewership over here.
What kind of
Just wanna
mocktail is that?
What's that?
What kind of mocktail is that?
So it's basically like a Spindrift, orange with a little bit of cranberry juice and a little bit of orange juice.
Call the cops. Jeez, that sounds delicious.
Yeah, and the cranberry juice is a nice effect, and it's good for your, just cleansing out your liver and, yeah, just all your body, organs. So, yeah. Anyway.
Yeah, I feel like the biggest challenge for you during this time
Mhm.
must have been the initial blow of receiving the news that you have leukemia. Or is there a more challenging time during that you wanna speak on?
Uh, Man, I would say that the most challenging part probably was, man, I gotta go with probably in the middle of it. I mean, yeah, the news of it was tough, but I think, like, when I was, like, 6 months, 12 months into treatment, I think what happened was you kinda hit a point where you're almost thinking like, "Man, this really is tough." Like, when you're about 6 treatments in, you know, and, like, you're really, really struggling, I think I think that was the toughest part, mentally speaking. And, it tested you because, like, as a kid, you don't wanna go, you don't wanna, like, keep going, you just kinda wanna enjoy your life, but then, like, as a kid, you have to realize you have to do things that you don't necessarily wanna do. Um, and I'd say, like, another point maybe that was tough, I remember that was actualizing for me, was I remember they brought in these 2 big needles, and they stuck one in each of my thighs. I remember I cried because it hurt really badly. Like, probably one of the worst physical pains I've ever had, and I remember I was like, "Mom, I wanna go home," and then my mom was like, "Well, if you go home, you're gonna die," and that was, like, one of those things where that really hits you in the face, like, "Oh, I have to be here." Like, I don't really have a choice, and that's why it's, like, sometimes one of those things where you have to do things that you don't necessarily wanna do. You have to do things that you have to do, and they're not always fun. Sometimes it's a little painful. Sometimes it hurts a little bit, but in the end, it'll save your life. So, I would say that those 2 moments specifically probably were the toughest. And I would say, like I also say the middle point too because, like, I remember I had to sit out in sports. So, like, I sat out most of baseball, probably all of baseball, and then I sat out most of soccer, and then I tried to get into basketball, which was the that was my favorite sport I've ever played, and I couldn't play basketball for a little bit. Like, I had to sit out a lot of games and, you know, I remember I wore the warm-ups even though I knew I wasn't playing because I wanted to feel part of the team, and we were a good basketball team, and I really loved the sport, and you were taking that away from me, and I was like, "Man, that really hits you mentally." So, I would say,
Really?
like, yeah, that first 6 to 8 months in probably was the toughest.
Do you remember Lafayette camp for basketball?
Oh, yeah, 100%. I was the man. I was the dribble knockout champ, reigning every time, dude.
Do you remember I don't know why I remember this, but I feel like this happened, or maybe my brain made this memory up. Someone was talking garbage to one of the women counselors and then had to play them in a game of knockout, and the woman counselor won. I don't think that was you, though. I think it might have someone else.
Yeah, that definitely was not me. That is definitely out of character, for me at least. I know who the counselor was, pretty sure it was Porter. Had to have been Porter.
Whoever the girls' basketball coach was, I think.
I think it was Porter. Yeah, I think it was Porter because that's Porter's daughter.
Yeah.
Yeah,
How
I think
many
it was
years did you do at camp?
how many years?
Yeah.
Oh, I did it till probably 7th grade, I wanna say, say, because then I went to De Smet, so it probably was literally, like, 1st grade or the youngest you could do it all the way up to 7th grade. I think that's what it was.
Wow. And then you mentioned the toughest times. What were the best times for you during that period of your life?
I would say the best times when I was sick, probably getting gifts and, I would say the random foods I really splurged on. Um, it's so funny because, like, my gut was, like, really torn up from medication. So, like, your gut's really important to you. My gut was just ripped apart, and it's just funny that, you have people that can't handle dairy. I loved cheese probably more than any person you coulda ever, like, known. Like, even someone from Wisconsin or Green Bay or whatever, I love cheese more than that person when I was, like, taking this steroid, and man, I would just devour all any cheese you can put in front of me. So, yeah, I would say and then going to Disney World too, that was, like, a great experience, obviously going with my family and getting picked up from, school in a limo, that was awesome.
Dang.
Yeah. Yeah, I was a DreamFactory Make-A-Wish, recipient. So, got to go to Disney for free. Actually, that's probably the best memory ever, obviously. So I stayed at, like, this village for I don't wanna use the term incorrectly. It was I wouldn't say terminally ill kids, but kids with, you know yeah, illnesses that are pretty severe. So, like, kids with cancer or, um, probably Probably MS, I would, and cystic fibrosis, that's what I was thinking of, like, cystic fibrosis and, all these different and it is still functioning today. Give Kids the World is one of the best organizations I think I've ever been, like, you know, worked with, in my career after college for a little bit, and then also being a sick kid. Um, yeah, I mean, awesome place. It was basically like think of basically just like a retirement community that you find with like all the like houses and condos and stuff. But then like you have so many amazing kid friendly amenities. So they had like the characters they came and you got pictures with them. They had a free ice cream bar like all day and night. Like they had people working crazy hours. They had like full kitchens and stuff if you wanted to cook, but then they had full, like cafeteria amenities. They gave us food vouchers for the park. They gave us souvenir vouchers, like I mean, and I got like now it's like kind of crazy because you have like you pay extra for like a fast pass at Disney, right? To cut to a certain degree. Like instead of waiting 2 hours for a ride, you'll wait like 30 minutes for a ride or an hour. And I think they still do this. I got a card that would cut the whole line, so I didn't have to wait at all. Maybe even like 5 minutes tops. That was like the longest I ever waited. So it was it was the greatest trip. Like, and I think it was a week, maybe. And then I went to Cocoa Beach after that. So that was
Yeah, the organization was called what, Make-A-Wish?
no. So the organization was called DreamFactory. So what DreamFactory is, it's like the Make Wish Foundation. It's just a different name. Um, but they're based. I want to say they're based in St. Louis, possibly, but they're a smaller organization than the Make a Wish Foundation. So it's basically just like same concept, just yeah, it's just different organization. But yeah, great people. I remember because my grandmother died, and after my grandmother died, that was really hard for a lot of us, like everyone in my family. And she died literally like right before the trip, or like, yeah, it was like right before the trip. And they actually like, I remember I think pushed our trip back a little bit, or actually, no, they didn't. But they took care of us, especially after my grandmother died of lung cancer while I was going through leukemia. So, yeah, I mean, that's just world class organization. I really wish them the best always because they're a great group of people.
Yeah, and since you said you did some work with them, could you explain how the whole process works or how they kinda divvy up these benefits to these children?
So I worked with the Make Wish Foundation, not Dream Factory, but working with Make a Wish was a good 6 month experience. I was a wish coordinator. It was my first job out of college. Working for a nonprofit. It's definitely a lot different than working a for profit company, right? But the Disney stuff is pretty wild because what I guess like what they don't tell you is everyone gets the same wish. Like in terms of a monetary value, everyone gets the same wish, which I forgot what it was. It's probably higher now because of inflation, but it was like I want to say $10,000 per family because you have to budget for a family of five because that's what statistically what you run into. Like you'll run into you know even if they're divorced, you have to have two parents, like both parents. Wish kid, three, and then usually there's one or two siblings, so that's like four or five. So but when you budget 10,000, it can be taken up pretty quickly. What Disney does for Make-A-Wish in terms of like donations and stuff like that, it's unreal. It is extremely unreal. And then Give Kids the World, they're all volunteer based. They're not paid for their time. They're all volunteers. So that cost isn't really even factored at all. I mean, I don't even remember what you had to pay or, what we got invoiced for Give Kids the World because I mean, you're really just looking at, maintenance costs to keep the lights on, if anything, but it's a nonprofit. So, you know, they're pretty much donation based and covered there. So I don't even know if we had to pay for that either. So it was really just, the flights and, you know, meals for their trip, right? So the $10,000 at Disney World, you can stretch that. And like we got so many great benefits in terms of, we could schedule excursions, obviously within fairness of every wish, but, like, every child got, like, a really cool excursion, whether it's, like, meeting, like, a Disney princess or going, to a meet and greet, at Star Wars or, meeting Mickey Mouse or, whatever. So, yeah, I mean, there's a lot of really cool amenities with, Disney World trips and Make-A-Wish, and honestly, it's so funny because Disney World trips probably make up, I would say 80% of wishes at Make-A-Wish. Like 80%. It's pretty crazy. I don't know what that looks like now, because of, Disney and kinda how they present themselves, politically speaking. I won't get into that with you, but I'd be interested to see those statistics now because, they do give a lot. They do give a lot of benefits.
What do you what memory sticks out to you during your time at Make-A-Wish?
Mm. I left before COVID. So what was crazy was I left COVID for worldwide, and my last wish that I was planning got canceled because of COVID, because it was in Japan. And it was crazy because I didn't think it'd be a big deal, you know? Didn't think it would, become what it became, right? So that was kind of a crazy memory, but I would say well, I guess best memory is what you wanted to know. So the best memory I would say is actually some people might find this sad, but I did an emergency wish literally, I'm not kidding you, like 2 weeks into the job. Like I was brand new. It was at most a month, but I'm pretty sure it was like 2 weeks in. Emergency wish. So an emergency wish, what happens is you have to turn around a wish because somebody is in tough shape. And I won't say the hospital, and obviously due to privacy and things, I won't give too many intricate details. But I remember putting on the wish at this hospital, and I called Fredbird, Louie. I called people that dressed up as Sesame Street characters. Um, I coordinated, high end. I can't remember the bakery. I wish I could say who it was, but I don't remember who it was. It was like a high end bakery that did luxury bakery items. Called them for cupcakes. Try to get as many people, to invite as many people as possible and stuff. And this, I can't remember what she had, and for privacy, I won't share. But we had a Sesame Street party at this hospital, and there was like, I'm not kidding you, there was like 200 people that showed up, and most of them were staff at this hospital. And Fredbird and Louie were there. The Sesame Street characters were there. I had pictures with them. It was really cool. Got to have pictures with them, and then yeah, just the family was like, "Thank you so much." And then she passed away. Like I think she passed away 2 weeks after that, 3 weeks after that, maybe. And I remember I got in my car and I cried on the way home because it felt like I actually did something for someone that was truly like, from the bottom of my heart because I took stressful hours to, like, get stuff like, I printed, like, a Sesame Street, like, Etsy made sign that said the girl's name and, like, all this like, I was doing some outside the box creativity on the fly, and I only had, like, pretty much maybe over 5 days to do this, right? And, like, I put in so much time and effort into that, and obviously, like, when you get paid at a nonprofit, it's not crazy high. It was just out of the genuine nature of what we do, and I had people helping me out, along the way, and people donating so much stuff, like that bakery donating stuff, the Fredbird and Louie people, like, donating their time actually as well, they weren't charging, um, like, it's just so much out of the goodness of people's hearts, and it made me believe in the human spirit in a way, like, there are good people out there, like, there are 100% good people out there because I got to witness that, like, I got to experience that in a room full of, like, hospital workers and, you know, nonprofit workers and then friends and family, like, yeah. It really made me super emotional, and when I got the card from them after she passed, yeah, that was a lot. Um, so that was kinda my in-depth, probably favorite moment actually ever because of how much that meant to be a part of. And then my superficial, I would say, favorite moment is I got to go to, Herbie's in Clayton, and I got to be with the Stanley Cup. So I got pictures with the Stanley Cup after the Blues won. So that was my superficial kind of favorite memory. But that memory I told you about just now, that was probably my favorite in depth, actually below the surface memory that I don't really tell many people about.
Yeah, dude, props to you and everyone involved in that. That's an awesome
Oh yeah.
story and event, and I'm sure the family was very grateful for everyone's contributions on that to, make the last moments of their daughter's life as memorable as possible for her. It's like, that's just sensational.
Yeah.
Do you think that a lot of people that go through something that you went through and work with these numerous nonprofit organizations end up giving back to some degree when they're adults?
I'd say yeah. And I say yes because I think when you're truly impacted by someone or something, you'll want to give back. And you'll want to give back because paying it forward is just as important as receiving. Because there's three types of people in this world. There are givers, there are takers, and then there are give and take. Those are like the scoreboard people, I guess, in a sense. But I will say this. Obviously, you want to be a giver. You never just want to be a taker, at least from a reputation standpoint. But the scoreboard people, they're always they're always going to give back at least. And I think that made me a scoreboard person because I received so much love and support as a kid that I wanted to give it back at some point. And I think when it happens as a kid, it's just different. Like it really is just different. I think when you are a kid that goes through cancer, you'll want to give back someday because you just knew how that felt. So when you know how it feels to receive that, you're going to want to give that back tenfold in some sort of way. And I think that's what makes this whole experience, the human experience, so genuine and so unique because you have an opportunity to not just conquer your traumas or just conquer your illness or whatever, but you get to give back and help those that go through the same situation as you. Not because you feel like you have to, but because you want to and you know what it feels like.
Mm, What advice would you give someone that is going through what you went through? Like a child that just got diagnosed, what advice would you give the child, the family, all of that.
Yeah, I would say when you get diagnosed with something that could take your life, the thing that you can the thing that you must do is you just gotta live day to day in the present moment, grateful for who you're with, what you have, and where you're going. You have to show gratitude for that, and then be present, because when you're in the present moment, you're just enjoying life and you're not really thinking about, "Oh, I gotta go do this treatment, down the line," or, "Oh, I don't know if I'm gonna make it," or, "Oh, where's the light at the end of the tunnel?" The light, you know, will come, but you can't think about it because if it's like 2 years away, because I knew I was gonna have to do treatment for at least 2 years, 2.5 years. They were pretty accurate on how long I was gonna have to do treatment for, because, obviously, science and, research and those things. So, I mean, you can either focus on how long it's gonna take you to get there, or you just live in the present and you're grateful for the present, and those 2.5 years will fly by. Those 2.5 years didn't feel that long, but that's because I didn't make it feel long. I just enjoyed being with my friends, being with my family, playing sports, and just being a part of the moment. And you know what? Every time I've been a little too futuristic at times, I tell myself, slow down, just enjoy today. Because that's what I had to do at one point in life. I just had to enjoy today. Even if tomorrow wasn't guaranteed, I just had to enjoy today. I had to enjoy the people that I was with at that time. I had to enjoy the moments that I had at that time. I had to enjoy the baskets I was, hopefully scoring at that time, or, just cheering on my buddies scoring the basket. Seeing my buddies hit a home run, score a goal. I was enjoying that. I was a part of that. And yeah, in the end, it's not even about you. It's about what God has given you. And God's given you a test to show your faith and your will. And it goes beyond your ego. And that's why I'm grateful for the experience still. I think it's made me a really good team player. I think it's made me a great team player because I know how to be selfless at times.
Mm. What are your thoughts on death these days, being so close to that point?
Oof. I go back and forth. I think death is a part of life, but the thing about death to me is like, man, I get both sides because it's like, man, I have so much I want to accomplish and I have so many things I want to do and yada, 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 right? Like we're all just trying to, live in our purpose and do our thing. But man, it's just like, if it was your time to go, then it was your time to go. And I mean, death can be also self inflicted though, too. And I think what I have to understand, I think what we have to understand as a collective community is that it's all about divine timing, but you can sometimes create your own timing. And I say that because, I talk about self inflicted. When you put yourself in situations for death, that's a self inflicted wound. Um, that's not really divine timing because you controlled that in a way. But when things happen like, you know, disease, cancer, accidents, whatever, it was almost just divine timing. And I guess you were called to be elsewhere. And yeah, that's why sometimes it's a tough question to answer. But I think that's how I view it right now. And I think my own experience kind of just brought that to me because there's a certain aspect you can control, like your own health and well being and, stuff like that. But there are some things out of your control as well, like, like getting hit by, a drunk driver or something of that nature. That's like out of your control, really, right? So you just have to understand that, I guess.
Mm. You mentioned, God.
Yeah.
Let's say he strolled down here and said, "Cooper, you can ask me one question, and I'll give you an answer right now." What'd you ask him?
What would I ask God?
Yeah.
Ooh, I would ask God, like, what is the how do we get to our highest selves? Like, how do we get to our highest form? And how do we live in, I guess, like, full divine purpose? That's what I would ask.
Interesting. Our highest selves.
Mhm.
Walk me through that one.
Highest self is the reflection of you are living your God-given path. Like, you are fully living that dharma is what, um, I think the Hindus call it dharma, but, living in your full purpose. And I say that because when you're not aligned in your purpose or aligned with God's purpose, life tends to bring unnecessary stress. I think stress is there are times where things just get stressful in life, but there's unnecessary stress when you're not living in full alignment with God. So living in your highest form, in your highest self, is you acting in that purpose and living a conscious lifestyle. So that conscious lifestyle is praying, meditating, doing, a scripture study, or even just treating others with respect and kindness that Jesus did in a way. That's what living in your highest form is. And that's where God sends messages to you and through you, and helps you become the channel that you are for God, for God's messages.
So essentially maximizing the alignment of God's ways and your own.
Yeah. And fully, having trust in God to, you know, give you that purpose and that dharma. Cause like I talk about the ego, we self-inflict a lot of our own pain and struggle at times. Like we sometimes make our own lives hard because we don't decide to just give it to God, to put in God's hands. I actually do love the concept of like when you're praying and you're just like giving that up to God. You're giving up like your financial standing to God, or you're giving up a relationship to God, or you're giving up like you're giving it up to God. I love that because when you do that, you surrender control and you surrender your ego because you don't care how it looks anymore or how it feels or whatever it does to your senses. All you care about is it's fully aligned, and then that's when the bliss and abundance and love and peace, that's when all the good stuff comes in because you gave that up. You gave up that control.
Were you ever mad at God during your time?
Probably. I don't really remember specific memories, but yeah, probably. I was probably mad at God for sure when I got sick. I mean, who wouldn't be, right?
Have you gone through any type of, very, very notable ups and downs with your faith as your life has progressed?
Yeah, absolutely. I think my journey of religion and figuring out, how to be a Christian, just, being a practicing Catholic, going to Catholic school in my life, um, having traumatic experiences with the Catholic Church. Um, I'd say that was probably the toughest. And I would say, yeah, probably going through just like college and questioning myself, also being insecure, um, and realizing that after college how insecure I was and still was insecure till about, a few years ago when I started my own healing journey, I would say, yeah, that's when I struggled the most. Like there's been a lot of ups and downs in my life. I would say middle school, being bullied, high school, having multiple friends commit suicide. Um, and then college, I tore my labrum, so I had lost football for a little bit, had an identity crisis, got into some really bad habits. And then after college, when COVID hit, really just being like, what do I want to do with my life? Where do I want to go with life? Because I don't want to be doing this because I'm floating and I don't want to float. And that's when I just gave it all up to God and I just really dove in on just trying to be a great person no matter what. And now it's gotten me here where, yeah, I'm just trying to be a good Christian that, embodies Christ like values.
Do you still subscribe to Catholicism?
No,
Not at all.
no, not, yeah, not at all.
Is that due to what happened to you, or is that due to you don't believe the beliefs within Catholicism?
Yeah, it's a little bit of both. I think a lot of people have been traumatized by that origin of faith. A lot of young people, especially, and I don't blame, obviously, because I'm one of those people, right? So, um, and I appreciate the older generations that are seeing that now, because I mean, there have been a lot of messed up things that have happened in that sect, um, and it's really sad. And I've even witnessed I've witnessed that like in my childhood too, which is crazy. Um and super sad, and the things that happened that were covered up too, I think is very abysmal, and people were like, well, they, put the Catholic Church in the light because, it's such a big church. And it's like, well, yeah, but when you commit heinous acts, you got to be held accountable. And there have been
Mhm.
other churches that have done heinous things and they've been put on the chopping block by, media organizations and those sorts of things. So, yeah, I just don't blame people for unsubscribing.
Mm. Do you blame people from unsubscribing, but becoming atheists?
Yeah, yeah. I do not understand that. I do not understand how you just like don't believe in anything, you know? Like that's hard for me to get behind because if you don't believe in anything, how do you believe in yourself? Because like if you're connected to God, right? And you're connected with your purpose, right? But you don't believe anything is if you don't believe anything's real, then like why do you have a job? Like why do you get married? Like why do you do anything? Like I still can't process that, you know? Like I just can't process how you don't think anything is real. No deity is real. Nothing created is real, but you still do anything. Like you still have a job and you still want to get married or have kids or whatever. It's just like how do you not even believe in the life force energy, which is God?
Yeah, I think that's always been kind of fascinating to me, the idea of abandoning your worldview because of the people within your worldview disappointing you. And I really wondered that for a long time if under any circumstances church hurt could ever be a reason to leave Christianity,
Hmm.
because you're basically blaming God for the people that claim to represent him.
Hmm.
And I've never thought that was a fair conclusion to come to before leaving the walk with Jesus Christ, a walk with God,
Hmm. Right.
and and going towards a different lifestyle and what that should or should not bring you.
Yeah, I mean, there's hypocrites in everything in the world. You're gonna find hypocrites everywhere. That's how it is. That's how it works. Um, you know, I used to know people that went to church every Sunday that were the most like miserable, families and just not great people, not great business people, very yeah, just, con artist like. And I know people now that are Christians that are big con artists, like business owners. But I don't blame the religion. Like I don't blame Christianity for that. I don't that person is that person. And you know what? That's on them. If they wanna use Christianity to just try to make themselves look good, in in the the public eye or a public setting. Like, I can understand, like, why you'd be upset at that person, but don't blame the religion. It's not the religion's fault. The book's there. You interpret the book how you wanna interpret it. But what I know Christianity can bring is a sense of, I think a good example of, like, how to love others and how to embody because I think just, like, the story of Jesus is truly incredible, I truly believe, like, the story of Jesus is what I think we all should embody because of how loving that person was and how gentle he was as a leader, but still masculine as a leader. I think I think should inspire all men, you know, everywhere.
Yeah, the level of self-control Jesus had, the level of discipline, care, patience, all those things is truly otherworldly to grasp,
It really
and just
is.
the way he is you would think of an outsider that didn't really know much about Christianity, you would think Jesus just showed up as this king, this royal person, this highly respected individual just, like, immediately, but it wasn't like that at all. I mean,
No.
this dude grew up in Nazareth, and it's like Nazareth is back then the East St. Louis of the times. Shout out to
Mhm.
East St. Louis. But,
Shout out to St. Louis.
but he was just different, and the idea of someone being mistreated in the church and then just saying, "You know what? I don't think the resurrection happened." It's just like, you don't think it happened because that person mistreated you, or you don't think it happened because you don't think it happened?
Right. Yeah, I think, yeah, unless you show empirical evidence, like I said, earlier before we started this with the Joe Rogan stuff, like, if you can come up with empirical evidence, by all means. But until then, can't can't get behind that, you know what I mean? But yeah, I think a lot of people just take it out on yeah, they just take it out on certain people that maybe traumatize them. And I don't think that's completely fair. I think because even like people that I know that are Catholic, I don't judge those people. I have friends that are Catholic. I still love them, family. I have family that's Catholic. I still love them. Um, Me taking a step back from that definitely showed true colors though from certain friends. Um, and I've had bad experiences with Catholic priests, especially now, doing, Reiki. I've had a bad encounter with the priest talking about Reiki. Um, but I've talked to, another Catholic priest that was very positive about Reiki. So like, that's not a fair shake to generalize all groups of people. You know what I mean? Like no matter what, some people are going to think some things are, super strict by the book, black or white. And then there are some like super religious people that are also like very gray area too at the same time, There's there's so much open perspective I think that you have to take in and you can't generalize people. Like you can't put people in a box
Mm,
because like I said, Jesus didn't do that. I mean, Jesus loved saints, he loved sinners, tax collectors, religious people, like, he loved all people. He just didn't like the dogmatic people that were, pointing the finger and, trying to stone people to death. That in reality was, I mean, very hypocritical, you know what I mean? So, um, yeah, there's just like a lot of people that you just can't generalize just because of what they, practice religiously. I mean, even politically too, like people that, die on the political hill, um, with political parties, like I don't get behind that either.
Yeah, just so the audience knows, Cooper wrote in Hillary Clinton for this year's election.
No, I wrote in Kanye West.
Good choice, the GOAT.
He's gonna change our school systems.
That's good news. Have you ever experienced something supernatural?
Um, yeah, I mean I mean, um, yeah, so, like, part of my work is supernatural. So for people that don't know what Reiki is a practice of energy movement. It's been around for thousands of years. Actually, there's a, I don't, I'm not saying this is true. I'm just saying this is a theory that's been thrown out there that Jesus was a practicing person, like of Reiki. They say in the theory, quote unquote, that there was a time where in the Bible where there's a gap between, you probably know it better. Wasn't there a gap, like a certain period of his life before he came back
I
from?
think it was 12 and 30.
Yeah. Yeah, so between that, like, 20-year, yeah, 20-year age, like, 20-year gap, part of the theory is that he went to, like, Southeast Asia, and he also learned, like, Reiki as a practice, and just, like, excelled. Don't know if it's true or not. Obviously, I don't have empirical evidence, but that would be pretty cool if that, came about. But so it's energy work, it's energy movement. So a lot of massage therapists use Reiki, chiropractors use Reiki. There are certain medical practitioners that also use Reiki. It's not as accepted in the Western world, but in the Eastern world and especially in Asia, it's a huge practice. So I learned from a woman who learned from a Tibetan monk. So I have this kind of lineage that's very connected to Tibetan monks, which is kind of cool. Um, and basically, what I do is I lay hands on people or hover. Doesn't have to be touch, but usually people don't, mind. So what I do is I work through your energy, your kind of your magnetic field, and I've worked with just different parts of yourself, different energy centers of yourself, and learning about energy on the quantum level. Like, I'm a big proponent of quantum physics and quantum energy and like all those things. Like, Oppenheimer actually studied, quantum energy and quantum physics. That's how he made the, nuclear bomb, basically. But anyway, so one profound supernatural moment I had was I worked on a woman's, I worked on her throat, and she was bullied as a kid for singing, and she lost her voice, like, in terms of, like, she couldn't sing because she was so scared. So I worked on her throat, and I was able to work on her inner child that was connected to her throat. Um, so basically, I was able to visualize her inner child and just hold space for that and allow the inner child to kinda heal that trauma. And I was allowing her to heal that trauma that she had and be able to, like, visualize that and let that go. And after the session, she started singing and recording music. I wanna say it was, like, literally a week or 2 later, and then she was putting out music, like, songs, and she was recording music in studios, and yeah, she was getting a little bit of movement there. Yeah, and she finally just felt the confidence to use her beautiful voice, and she didn't have that for literally decades of her life. So, I would say that's probably my supernatural Yeah, it was probably my supernatural moment.
She said thank you?
She did say thank you. Yes, she said thank you. She paid me. Yeah, it was fine. It was all good.
Cool, man. Well, yeah, thanks for coming on, Coop.
Yeah.
Do you have anything else for our viewers?
No, I mean, I thanks for having me. Thank you for letting me take up a lot of your time. It was really cool just to, express, the story, also talk a little bit about some sensitive topics. I think it's really refreshing to talk about religion and politics in such a lighthearted manner because I think we shouldn't be afraid to talk about those things. I think we should be courageous to speak our opinions and then listen to those differing opinions if it's there. And also even just talking about energy work and Reiki, like having that space to do so. I appreciate your open mind to that because I know a lot of people when they hear kind of woo woo, hippie concepts, it's sometimes a lot to take in. So no, I just thank you for letting me share everything. And, like I said before, with, someone who, might get diagnosed with not even just cancer, but just even just a life event that's like,
Yeah.
you get hip. Not that I want anyone to, I'm not trying to manifest this for anyone, but like, if, you get in an accident or like, all these things, it's not over, it's just an event. And when you just look at it as an event and you keep pushing forward, I promise your life gets better. And when you give that up to God, you're gonna get some abundance. I promise you that. So, um, your life's not over. Your life is always just beginning, and it starts with every single day when you wake up. So,
Amen, Coop. Thanks for coming on. See you at work tomorrow.
yeah, see you at work.